and then we'll start. Okay, good evening, everyone. So today we'll be doing the second info session. So we'll be going over the campaigning rules and basically what's about to happen in the upcoming days. So we have the campaigning phase and we have the polling phase. So just a reminder, the campaigning phase will start on March 6th and it will be ending on March 13th. So it's 6 days, 6 university days. After that, March 14th to 16th, we'll have the polling period. So that's where 3 days students will have a chance to vote. So, so we'll also be having 2 debates. So the first one will be on March 8th. That one will be right here in the large lounge of the hall building. So it'll be at 6. It will also be live streamed on CUTV's YouTube channel 514. So, and the second debate will be March 13th. And that one will be held in Loyola's SB 110 building. So it'll be a continuation of the first debate probably, and it'll just be a chance for candidates to present themselves and give their thoughts on various topics. So, so the debate is open to everyone. So council candidates, executives, Senate. So like I said, just a chance for everyone to present themselves. Okay, so I'll be starting with the campaigning rules. So, general provisions. Okay, so campaigning, so first we'll define what campaigning is. So campaigning is defined as influencing a member to vote for a particular candidate, a particular executive slate, or in favor of against a referendum question. Campaigning includes the sharing of political platforms, campaigning names, slogans, and promotional materials. So basically, campaigning is just whenever you try to influence somebody into voting for you, that'll be considered campaigning. So you can only do that during the 6 days I outlined, so March 6th to March 13th. So, however, encouraging people to vote in general is not considered campaigning. So only when you encourage people to vote for you, that is when it's considered campaigning. So, for example, once the campaigning period ends, during the 3 days of polling, you can always tell people hey, we're having CSU elections, remember to vote. So that's not considered campaigning. So you can't insinuate that they should vote for you. So like I said, so if you do get caught campaigning during the polling period, you will get sanctioned. So I'll go over the sanctions later. So next we'll talk about the rules of fair play. So candidates shall campaign in accordance with the rules of fair play. Breaking the rules of fair play includes breaching generally accepted community standards, libel, harassment, slander, and general sabotage of the campaigns of other candidates. So now basically we're going to be going over what are some of those examples. So the first one is abuse of office. So no candidate may take advantage of any resource or other benefit to which they have access by virtue of holding elected or important office or being an employee of the student union or a subsidiary of a faculty/department's association, club, service, or media organization. So what that means is basically if you've already held an office in the CSU, for example, if you're an outgoing executive or you've been in council before, you already have more knowledge than the person that's running for the first time. So you cannot use, for example, your connections. It's you may know some of the staff, or you may try to use that to for example, book tables in your favor. So you cannot do that. The second one is use of space. So like I said, the example of tables. So you cannot book tables for yourself unless they're available for everyone. So if you want to, for example, book a table at Loyola, you have to tell me first. So you can reach out to me at ceo@csu.qc.ca. And you could say, hey, I wanted to table at Loyola, for example. Then I would make that space available to everybody. So you cannot just have a space available to yourself. The mezz tables, 2 of the mezzanine tables will be available throughout the campaigning period. So I'll be sending you details about that because you cannot just table the whole day. You gotta like respect like a time limit. So for example, it might be like 1 hour and you may not be able to, in consecutive days, to use it at high peak, like where there's a lot of traffic. So next is bribery. So, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. You cannot promise any money, well, monetary or non-monetary reward to members for voting in a particular way. So you cannot, for example, give someone $5 and be like, hey, can you vote for me in the general elections? That's a big no-no, I guess. So, and you could also not use non-monetary incentives. So like somebody last semester was saying, can I bake cookies and distribute them and campaigning that way? That is also not allowed because obviously someone might have more means, for example. They might have access to more money, so they'll be able to just bribe everyone. So we're trying to keep it a level playing field. Next is defamation. So you cannot target the reputation of anybody, of your candidates, unless it's fair criticism. So you cannot, and the next thing, so you cannot, just make up stuff about other people like, hey, such and such is promising to do that, or attack them, be like, insult them in any way. You can criticize them as long as it's fair and you're actually criticizing some of their positions. Interference. Okay, so any attempt to undermine the electoral process will be punished. So basically we'll be voting online on Simply Voting. So you cannot try to, it's pretty much impossible, but if you try to hack it, you will be sanctioned. Okay, and back to the other point of misrepresentation of facts. So you can also not make up stuff about, let's say, the CSU. So you could say, well, the CSU has been doing this for years. If that is not true, you can be sanctioned. So that goes for individuals and the university in general. So just stick to facts. Okay, physical harm. So that's another obvious thing. You cannot beat up people or intimidate them physically, or like I said before, it was verbally. So you cannot do any physical harm or threats to someone's public safety. And also you cannot, so the next point is unauthorized campaigners. So you cannot hire any professional services to support your campaign. So it has to be you just directing your own campaign. Of course, executives, if they're in an affiliation, they can be a couple of them, a group of them campaigning together, but you cannot hire a professional team. So next we'll be talking about campaign materials. So campaign material may be distributed, posted, published, broadcast, or otherwise disseminated only during the campaigning period. For greater clarity, websites and videos can remain online, but no material can be added, nor can previous material be reposted after the end of the campaign period. So anything, so like posters, for example, pamphlets, any posts on social media, that's all considered campaigning material. So if you do, for example, so you cannot post any posters after the campaigning period is ending. But for social media posts, you can leave it up because it's complicated to kind of take things down. So, but you can just not add any more after that. So for physical campaigning, so I mentioned posters, they need to be on 100% recycled paper. So, for example, you could print them at the print store. So it's right next to the library in this SGW campus. So they'll provide you with recycled paper, and I'll get to it later. But you will be reimbursed if you're a counselor. And an executive or a senate. So I'll go over that later. So you can put up posters on any board throughout the university. So there are boards pretty much on every single floor in both campuses. There will also be some reserved posters. So you'll see a small little, rectangular little label that'll say reserved for CSU elections. So on those boards, all posters will be removed for the campaigning period, so it'll be just for candidates, but you can also use the other ones. But the goal of having reserved ones is that they'll be completely for the election. Okay, so candidates you can start posting on one day before the start of the campaigning period at 9 p.m. So that's being done because you don't want people to all at the same time in the morning like run into each other. So you can start before at 9 p.m. And within 6 days of the closing of the polls, all candidates and referendum committees have to remove their posters. So that means, the polling period ends on March 16th. So within 6 university days, so that's like business days, you have to remove all your posters. And if some of your posters are still up, you can be sanctioned. Next, we'll be talking about chalking. So this is a little old school. So if you want, you can also go into your classrooms and write on the board. You could write your name, you could write, I'm running for CSU elections, but of course for that you might have to get your professor's permission first. And of course you cannot take up the entire board, it just has to be a small portion maybe in the corner. And you could also do classroom announcements. For that as well, you'll have to probably ask your professor. So that, for example, before the class or after the class, you could say, hey, hey everyone, like I'm running for this position, like I stand for this and that, like I would really appreciate if you vote, like whatever you want to say, just make sure to ask your professor. You can also, like I said, you could table. So for that, again, there will be, the mess tables will be available. And also if you do want to table somewhere else, you'll have to contact me first. You can also make flyers, pamphlets, and business cards. So that there's actually a university policy on distribution of flyers. So there's only certain locations in which you can give out posters. So you can give out flyers, sorry. So you could give them out at tables that are booked, and you can also give them on the 7th floor cafeteria. So that's basically close to the CSU office. There's the People's Potato. So you could, for example, there's always a huge line up there at lunchtime, so you can give out flyers then. And finally, in the Loyola cafeteria as well, you can give them out there. So once again, you have to use recycled paper. For digital campaigning, so you can post on any social media platform. Again, it has to be during the campaigning period. You can also submit a request for like a student group. For example, Casa JMSB, you have to reach out to the admins, and if they accept your request, you can use that as well. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about restrictions during the voting phase. So it'll be electronic balloting. So if you try to vote more than once, I mean, it is impossible because it is a third-party platform, so you cannot do that. But if you are caught trying to, for example, we'll have polling stations. So if any of the polling clerks see you trying to vote more than once, you will be sanctioned. You can also not influence votes by holding parties or social events at which individuals are encouraged to vote on the premises. So you cannot, like, for example, book the large lounge and have like a social event, and the underlying reason for you to do that is to influence votes, so you cannot do that. You cannot offer favors or gifts in exchange for votes. So that's with the bribery policy. You cannot pressure anyone into voting. So for example, if you're standing, you cannot stand, that's one more thing, you cannot stand next to the polling station like all day trying to mean mug people and get them to vote for you. So you can also not give them a device. Like, for example, you walk up with your laptop, like, hey, vote for me. You cannot do that. You can direct people to, like I said, you could encourage them to vote, just not for you. So you can direct people to say, hey, we're having the polling period right now. If you want to head on down to a polling station to vote, but just again, don't tell them to vote for you. Also, you cannot collect any credentials from students to use to verify their identity. But again, it'll be online, so you won't be able to do that anyway. Okay, so the voting system, like I said, it'll be simply voting. So it'll be containing your surname and any given name or preferred name if you want. So you can reach out to me if you have a preferred name, and I'll put that one up. It'll also include, if you're an executive affiliation, it'll include the affiliation's name. It'll have, if you want to, is optional, but you can submit a photo if you want. Oftentimes that does help students like kind of identify you like with your bio. So if you want to, you're not obligated to. You can also submit a 250-word biography, and again, that does really help. Because it'll let students know like what you stand for, why you decided to run, kind of like give a background on who you are. So that you can send it to me as well. Also, the names will be put in a random order. So like, because if we do it in a fixed order, it might be like kind of biased. Like people might just click the first name that shows up. So every single ballot that will be created will have different like random variations of the candidates. Okay, there'll also be an option to abstain. So if students are not happy with any of the candidates, they can abstain. Okay, so the online voting system will be operational on the first day, so March 14th at 9 a.m. And it will be closing on the last day, which is March 16th at 9 p.m. So, like I said, there will also be 4 polling stations. So 2 at the downtown campus, 2 at Loyola. So the downtown campus, the polling stations are going to be probably in the Hall Building's lobby, as well as in the EV Building's basement. It is subject to change because we have to work with the university on that. And the 2 polling stations at Loyola will be in either in the Vanier Library and in the SP Building. So, and yeah, you could vote there. Like I said, again, you cannot be present at the polling station while the voting is happening. So, so that, of course, might be intimidation or just influencing people, so you cannot do that. So, also, no campaigning materials shall be within view of the polling stations. So, for example, like let's say, like I said, one of the polling stations might be in the Vanier Library, right? So if there's a poster, there's a board nearby with your posters, the polling clerks will be removing them, so to not like influence people at the last minute. Okay, so so the announcement of the results will be posted at the latest the next day at 12 p.m. So the announcement, so it'll include the results, the winners, and the results of any referendum questions. And you can always request a more like detailed view if you want. You can just reach out to me. But I will be posting them throughout the university, on social media, and on the websites. So like I said, yeah, you're entitled to see a printout of the official results. Yeah, okay, so now we're going to get to the election expenses. So election expenses are eligible for reimbursement. So election expenses are defined as the cost of any goods or services used during the election period. So it does not matter if expenses were used to promote a campaign or oppose a campaign. So for example, if you're in a referendum committee, that's one supporting the yes, one is supporting the no, they'll both be reimbursed. So the maximum amount of election expenses that may be incurred by a candidate for a particular office is as follows. So if you're running for executive, you have a budget of $100. Council is $50, and referendum committees is $150. So, and if you're in an affiliation, you can spend collectively. So let's say if you're 4 people in affiliation, it will be $400. Okay, And also there will be an expense form. So in that you'll have to document all your expenses. So you'll have to staple, for example, like if you print at the print store, just get the receipt and staple it on that and just give it to us. And I'll send you the expense form. I mean, whenever the nomination is received, an expense form is sent. So, all right. So, and also if you do not incur an expense, you still have to submit your expense form. So, yeah, it'll be available online on both websites. You could also request one at both of the offices at the CSU. Okay. Okay, yeah. So all candidates and main representatives must submit an elections expense form to the Elections Commission with all invoices and receipts within 6 days of the closing of the polls. So again, the polls will be closing on March 16th. So 6 university days you have to send the expense form. And you'll be generally like reimbursed within 30 days of the polls closure. Okay, so now we'll get to the part of the sanctions. So any candidate who is found by the chief electoral officer to have violated these regulations may be subject to sanctions, including but not limited to. So, okay, so before we went on into all the things that you can be penalized for, so some of the sanctions may look like, for example, you could be issued a written warning if it's not that serious. So that'll be judged by the CEO, so me. It can also be more serious, so you can be disqualified from the election, and that is the most severe sanction. So any sanction that is imposed, you have the right to. You do have the right to appeal that. So, okay. So okay, so in the disqualification, so it'll be like a document. It will be sent to you. Okay, so you can always contest it. So you can and you can also contest the results. So, for example, so if you find that for example, someone who was declared elected was ineligible, so you can contest that. So if you think that somebody who was elected did not get the votes, you can always contest that. But you do have to do it no later than 3 days of the announcement of the election. So the announcement will be made on the following day, so on Friday by 12. So you'll have 3 university days to contest. So yeah, you can also complain, file complaints if you want. So if you see that another candidate is not respecting the rules, for example, they're bribing someone, so you can file a complaint. So that will be you filing a complaint with me. So you do have to explain how they breached it and like provide an explanation and some evidence. You cannot just throw out allegations. So yeah, and again, so we'll have to go to the appeals. So any sanction imposed by the CEO may be appealed. The appeal procedure shall be carried out as follows. Candidates who have received sanctions or disqualifications may submit an appeal in writing to the judicial board no later than 3 days following the issuance of the decision. Such an appeal may be made on the grounds that the evidence used was false or the judgment of the CEO was manifestly unreasonable. So again, so for example, if I sanction you and you feel it wasn't fair, you can file an appeal with the judicial board, and they'll handle it from there. So yeah. So now I'll talk about the appeals to contestant and complaint decisions. So any decision by the CEO or the Elections Commission on a contestation or complaint may be appealed by the member who had submitted the contestation or complaint. So again, that's for the results as well. So it's the same policy. So within 3 days, you do have to appeal in writing to the judicial board. So yeah. Okay, so for the election rules, that's pretty much it. So I'll just go over the dates once again. So the campaigning period will be starting March 6th and it will end on March 13th. So that's 6 university days. And then March 14th, 15th, and 16th will be the polling period. So if you have any questions during that, you can contact me on ceo@csu.qc.ca. You can also come to the offices of the CSU and ask your questions. So, yep, this concludes our info session. So, thank you very much and have a great night. Thank you.
End the stream. So it's okay to end.
Yep.